Good evening and welcome to another edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television, and glad you're able to join us for this edition of In Focus, where we will be talking with some members of area school boards about what being a school board member means. There's still time if you have an interest in considering being on the school board. We're going to find out from these people who have been doing it, time commitments, what campaigning is like, some of the issues that they face, things of that nature. And later on in this hour, we'll speak with Tom Williams, president of the Richmond Chapter of the NAACP. They have an event that they had been doing for a number of years. It stopped, but it's coming back this year. That's the Unity Dinner, and we'll also be finding out what the NAACP is going to be doing. This community has lost a number of its leaders over a period of time, and it's hard to say who they all are. Obviously, recently, Andy Cecere, Dan Kappa is another one that we have lost, but the Whitewater Community Television family, we found out recently, also lost a member. Marilyn Fulton, who passed away in July, was vital to Whitewater Community Television for a number of years. She was a board member, she was a camera operator, she was a producer, she was very involved with this organization. She was a member of the board of directors when I was on the board a number of years ago, and if you ever watch our From the Vault segments that we do on Friday evenings on WCTV Channel 21, you'll see Marilyn's name come up a great deal, so her loss will definitely be felt by this organization. Want to remind you, we mentioned that we'll be talking about school boards and races. The races are coming up. There is going to be a very big election this November, and we want to make sure that you are registered to vote. So you should take some time right now, pull out your phone, pull out your computer, your tablet, whatever it is, and just go to indianavoters.com and you can check whether you are actually registered to vote at that site. If you have moved in the last couple of years since the last election, it would be a great time for you to do that. If you want to do it in person, if you're not one who wants to do that kind of thing on your computer, then you can go to the voter registration office, 301 East Main Street, and see the folks down there, and they will make sure that you get signed up. I mentioned that there are a lot of races coming up. This is the earliest that we will be starting our In Focus candidate forums that I can remember doing, and they will actually start next week. We have invited candidates for the Hagerstown Town Council. There are 3 people running for 2 seats. All at large there in Hagerstown, so we have invited those candidates to join us next week. Following week, August 30th, we have invited in candidates running for town council in Fountain City. There are actually 4 people running for 2 seats there. Because the school board races are not yet decided, we have held about 3.5 weeks for school board races, so starting September 6th through the 20th at least, maybe a little bit farther than that. We'll hopefully be talking with members in contested races for school boards, and then you see the rest of the dates up there. October 6th, candidates for 6th Congressional District. October 11th, Indiana State Representative District 56. October 18th, County Council District 3. October 25th, Indiana State Senate, District 27, and then on November 6th, election night, we will be here beginning at 6 o'clock, and we will be with you until all the votes have been counted, and we know who the winners are, at least in Wayne County. We don't stay on the air until all of the state votes are counted, but we do stay on the air until we have the results for the Wayne County election. So that will be coming up, and that'll just give you an idea of where you can find out information about candidates running for office. Now to get into tonight's program, I want to thank these folks that have given up part of their Thursday evening, and just because I got some calls this past week wondering if you left off one of the superintendents. Everyone was invited, but sometimes people have obligations and they're not able to make it. But representing the Richmond Community School Board is Suzanne Derengowski. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Gary Keesling is with the Nettle Creek School Corporation. And Brad Lambright is with the Centerville-Abington School Corporation. Thank you all very much for spending some time with us this evening.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's start by asking, how long have you been on the school board? You may be longest tenured here, possibly?
I'm not sure, but it's probably been a little over 10 years, so
okay.
I've lost track.
It just keeps running around.
Absolutely.
Gary, how long have you been?
I'm in my 8th year.
Okay. And Brad?
In 2007 is when I started my first term.
Okay. You all have all been through this before, so what we want to start with is just your impression or your thought as to if someone is thinking about running for a school board office. What are some of the traits, what are some of the things that you think they should be thinking about up front, and what type of time commitments are they dealing with? We'll start with you, Suzanne.
The first thing I guess I would just say is that you do not have to know everything up front. You're not going to. So while you can be semi-prepared, you aren't going to be able to learn everything you need to know before you run. So just keep that in mind. You're qualified. You need to just decide whether you're interested or not. The time commitment really varies. Obviously, the part that the general public sees is a couple of meetings a month. But there are a lot of other activities and events depending on what maybe the school board is involved in, or what the school district is involved in. Right now, Richmond's working through a master planning process, so there's a few more of those. And then obviously lots of meeting prep. I mean, there's lots of documents to read, and so it's not a small time commitment for sure.
Okay. Gary, what about you?
There is definitely a time commitment involved. But what I would remind people who are wishing to run is have an open mind and be willing to learn.
Absolutely.
She's right. You aren't going to know everything up front, but there are a lot of learning opportunities provided through the Indiana School Board Association and other avenues, and it's always good to take advantage of those and broaden the information that you have.
Absolutely.
Well, I think going into it, as long as you have the kids' interests first, because I think most of us would probably agree that that's why we're here, that we're doing this for the kids, to give them the best education we can, at the best, cost, with the best teachers, with the best administration. So if you go into it with that mindset that, I'm doing this for the kids, I'm not doing it for myself, and then, of course, the time commitments that have already been mentioned, particularly when when laws change, policies change. There may be a night where we're reviewing a stack of policies that thick.
That's right.
So you can count on a meeting that's going to go maybe 2 hours plus, not to mention the time you put in before the meeting and reading those policies. So there are some time commitments. Reviewing the materials prior to the meeting, other committees you might be part of.
Right.
So just know that going into it, you are giving up some evenings. You may miss a baseball game. You may miss a basketball game because of a meeting going on that night. But just know those things going into it.
And this is going to be an open discussion, so I'm not going to go down the line, start.
Take turns.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to kind of have a discussion. What were some of the thoughts that ran through your head when you first decided to run? What were some of the things that you were thinking about? What were some of the reasons behind you stepping out and making that commitment? Because obviously somebody probably ahead of time said, okay, there's going to be a time commitment, your life won't always be your own. What were some of the factors that motivated you to step forward?
I was looking for community involvement. I wanted to be involved in the community. And I was seeking, and someone came up and said, hey, the person that's in your district isn't running now, so you may want to run for school board. So that'd be a perfect way to get involved in the community, because in a small town, the school is a primary center and function of the town. And in the small town, the schools is a center point of all the attention. So that's why I did. I wanted to be a community involvement, community servant thing, and the school board just kind of opened up for me, and it's worked out.
Yeah, similar story for me. I had been a teacher for a couple of years, and wanted to stay connected with the schools. And in Centerville, of course, school is right there in the middle of town, so it's a big part of the community as well. And had been considering it, was approached by an individual, so very similar story to Gary. And well, since 2007, that's where I've been. So.
We were talking to Ryan before we came in, and he said he hadn't really thought as much about school until his kids started in school. And that's sort of where I began. And I hope that other people listening might think about that too, is if you don't think you're ready for this commitment, look for other ways to engage in your child's school or in the district, because there are always committees and different ways for the public to be involved. And that's how I kind of got into it. Started with PTO and kind of just kept getting asked to be on different committees, and then at some point there was an open seat, and I was asked to, sort of apply to fill in the rest of a term. And then I am certain, and this isn't to scare anyone about elections, because now I wouldn't be as afraid, but I'm certain that if I had had to run the first time, I probably wouldn't have done it. It was a different process, filling out an unfulfilled term. But then after I served for a couple of years, the election was not as scary. So I guess if I'm talking to someone who might be interested in running, elections are not as scary as they sound.
What is that process like for someone? Because right now we know who's running for town council, things of that nature. School board still has a week. Next Friday, I believe the 24th is the deadline. So it's a little later in the cycle. But what is running for that office like? It's nonpartisan, quote unquote, but it falls into the same time as the other ones. How much campaigning do you have to do? How many people do you have to talk about? We hear about candidates having to go knock on doors. Is school board the same way? Is that the same type of election thing that you have to do?
Well, social media probably is a much bigger piece of it than it was,
Just
years ago
when we
first started
yeah,
on the board.
Absolutely.
So I would say, if we were in contested races, that would probably be a bigger part of the campaign than it would have been years ago. You still have the yard signs, of course. I mean, those never go away. But with your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those things would obviously be a piece of it as well.
The biggest challenge, I think, is communicating your positions on things that most people don't spend as much time learning about them that as we have been able to, and so helping to sort of put that into a concise, this is why you need to vote for me kind of a statement is the biggest challenge, and especially if you haven't run before, that is challenging. So, it would be as easy as just kind of talking about the things that you're interested in and why it is that you decided to run would be what I would recommend to anyone who might be considering doing that. As an incumbent, you have a little bit of an advantage because you have spent this number of years learning a little bit more about the bigger picture. But I think it's challenging because, as it would be, I think, for partisan races, is boiling down what it is, why it is you decided to put your name on the ballot, and helping people understand why you would be a good representative for them.
And as in many elections, there are fewer and fewer people who are actually voting, and fewer and fewer people who know the candidates and what they stand for. So like she said, it is difficult to get what you stand for and what you believe in out. The yard signs, I don't like to say it, but they're critical because your name's there.
They're just never going away.
Yeah, they're not going away. Folks walk up, they see the name. Hey, I've seen that name around, so I'm going to vote for it. Versus not having any, that leaves you at a disadvantage. The Nettle Creek Gazette, where we're at, they'll have people who are running, and they'll have kind of an interview in their page with that. Being involved in school type activities will get your name in there very well, because those people are the ones who are going to be interested in the school board. So if they see you involved in school activities, and then social media is huge these days, of course, but it's just getting people to see your name, a lot of it.
Most campaign budgets are very low in the school board, but I would say if anyone is interested, it's very easy to raise a little bit of money to help offset the cost. So it shouldn't be a cost prohibitive kind of thing. I say easy. If you're willing to ask a few of your friends to give a little bit towards your campaign, you can put together enough to buy a stack of yard signs pretty quickly. So no one should be intimidated by that part.
And you'll be below the threshold where you have to do the reporting. There's, I don't remember what the number is, but
$500.
$500. If you go above $500, you're probably spending a lot, particularly in a
On
small
yard
rural.
signs.
Yeah, in Richmond you may,
Yeah.
but in a small.
You can get over 500 with yard
yeah,
signs.
in our place, small rural school corporation in Hagerstown and Nettle Creek area, that's a lot of signs, that's going to buy. So most likely you're going to be, if you use the other avenues and other resources.
Okay, and that's probably something, because we do have a couple of different size districts here. You're saying under $500 or so should cover
Right
you as
at.
far as yard signs and things. In Richmond, the cost maybe doubles?
No,
No? Okay.
I shouldn't say that. I think it depends on what your comfort level is, but you do probably need a few more signs. But I learned that you can be very strategic with placement and get as much bang for your buck as if you had double the number of signs. I think social media is critical. I think just getting out and talking to the people that you know is critical. I think coming as you've decided to run, attending the meetings of the board that you are intending to run for is critical. That is a learning period of time that you can really do some learning. I would totally recommend that to anyone who is considering it. I think you can get by with less than double for sure on the budget.
Okay. Are people as engaged with what their school boards are doing and how really important and critical they are to the communities as they need to be? And if not, how do we begin to make people understand how important this part is from a tax dollar standpoint, from a community and workforce development standpoint? You sit in a room sometimes and people come in, and I'll see people at the Richmond School Board meeting at the very beginning when kids are being introduced or something, and then boom,
Right.
it doesn't seem to be anybody there. Are you finding that at your meetings, that maybe the community isn't as engaged as you would like to see them in general?
We are, in Nettle Creek, we're finding that a challenge right now. We've had issues that arise from time to time, and we see big crowds come in. And then once those issues kind of fade away, the big crowds leave, and they kind of forget we're there. So we need to take greater responsibility to tell people and show people what our vision, mission, objectives, and goals are, and how we are approaching those and the changes we're making, and so that we can meet those goals of a small rural, that small rural school corporation are involved in. So I think you're going to see out of Nettle Creek, you're going to see more advertisement, more notices, more information on those types of things, so that people aren't blind to what we're doing. And not that they're blind, but it's just not out there for them to see.
Sure.
So we're working on that.
There was a meeting last night. You all were talking about strategic planning, funding, and
Spending $5 million.
spending $5 million, and nobody in the room?
No one was in the room. Yeah, and I choose to believe it's because they think we're doing a really good job. But what I know to be true is that everyone is very busy, and especially people with children in school. It's sometimes hard to spend the time to understand big picture things. And so what you described is as an issue becomes important when it affects me directly. And so it is a challenge, I think, for school boards to communicate those important big picture issues and help people understand. Before we even really understand how it's going to affect you personally, we have to talk about the big picture issues. It has always been a challenge. It's why Richmond has continued to have their meetings broadcast. That's not always completely positive, because it is hard to have brainstorming kinds of conversations on TV, on camera, and not have people kind of prematurely react to what might happen. Just for example, and we've had over the course of my tenure on the board had to close buildings, and that is never a fun thing to do. And it's never popular with everyone.
Sure. It affects a particular neighborhood, a particular community.
Right. And yet if people had been engaged earlier, they would know that that was probably necessary. But of course, it's just a natural thing. So I don't blame people for it, but it is our challenge to make sure to communicate as much as we possibly can so that it isn't a surprise when it does affect them personally.
There are projects or there are situations that start maybe 3 or 4 months before action's taken.
Yes.
And there's a lot of discussion and deliberation and information that passes along that time. So people, if they're not at almost every board meeting or at least one a month, they're going to miss out on that information that's being passed through. Then we get down to the decision, and then all of a sudden, whoa, why did you do
Yes.
that? Well, we've been talking about it for 3 months.
Right, now it's
So-
at my front door.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
now it's there.
I
So-
understand it.
Yeah, so we just have to do and then where we are, we just have to do a better job of getting that information out so that people, at least it's there, and more people will know it.
Yeah, we do what we can to engage the community in every meeting as well. With we have on our agenda every meeting we have community comments where the community can address the board. At that time, we'll open the floor. They can speak. There's a limited time,
Right.
but they can address the board. And we have government students that come into our meeting to attend as part of their class, and we'll engage them in, all right, here's why we're doing this. Here's why, one of the biggest responsibilities the board has is our policies. This law changed, so that's why it affected this particular policy we're talking about. And then to follow up with something that was said earlier. If we're taking a vote on something that seems to be a very big decision, we'll go into a little bit more explanation of, it may seem that we haven't had much discussion on this because you're here at this one particular meeting, but this is something we have talked about. We've had contractors in here, we've had architects review this, we've had, and so now we're at the point where it's yes or no, and so we take that vote. Or consent items that we review since the Friday before our Wednesday meeting. Typically, we'll vote on 7, 8, 10 items all in one as a consent item because we've had the chance to review those. But we try to. I'll engage our students in the conversation so they'll understand why, and some of that may get taken back to the parents. Hey, this is going on. You might find this interesting, and recognitions with students, with parents, with teachers. We try to have something along that line at least every meeting. So we'll have some community members in there just about every meeting.
And I think you all do, you probably do too, but Richmond's board, all of the information is out online. So as of the Friday before, I believe, everyone could go out and see the agenda. But as we all know, I mean, how many emails do you get every day?
I don't even want to think about it.
Right, and so even if you were to shoot it out into everyone's personal email,
Right.
the chances of them being able to get to that and absorb it when there are other things that are more critical to their daily life is slim. So really pulling that information and being able to help people get to what the critical decisions are. But we always say, hey, we do the absolute best we can, but that's why they elected us to deal with some of these things. So it's tough.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with Suzanne Derengowski, Gary Keesling, Brad Lambright. They are representing Richmond Community Schools, Nettle Creek School Corporation, and Centerville Abington Schools. Kind of a general discussion about being a member of the school board, what some of our local school boards are up to right now. Obviously, next Friday is the deadline if you are interested in registering to run for one of the school boards, and there are multiple seats
have
open in each one of these districts, and I believe throughout Wayne County there's 3 seats that will be open in Richmond, 2 at large, so they would be citywide,
Correct.
1 for a district. There are 3 seats open in Nettle Creek. At large?
2 at large and 1 district. This is new for Nettle Creek. We just reorganized for this particular election going forward. So it's a new system.
Everyone was at large before?
No, everybody were districts before.
Oh, okay. Very
And
good.
we had some extreme rural districts that had very low populations, and we were having difficulty
I get it.
getting people to run. We were interviewing primarily for some of those spots. So the idea was is if we make it at large, and then reduce the number of districts to make the district larger, A, B, and C, then that would open up the whole corporation, whole Nettle Creek area for somebody to run. And from what, I haven't seen a listing of who's running, but what I'm hearing there is greater interest in
Good.
running this time, which is what we wanted to achieve.
Great. Centerville has
Two
seats.
2 seats open, one at large and one district.
Okay. Want to hit on a couple of other things real quickly, if I can. Marketing. I know that's something that has come. You're laughing. I know you've done the marketing committee at
Yes.
Richmond previously, but that's something that really has happened as the money, quote unquote, begins to follow the student, and the conversation began about we need to retain our students and maybe we need to try to grow ours. How has that changed the conversation that you all are having, and your marketing focuses? Are they within Wayne County trying to pull more students? Are they outside of Wayne County trying to pull students into Wayne County? How is that working? It's been a number of years since that's really kind of taken off.
We've all faced the same challenges,
Absolutely.
particularly when the tax caps and when some of the funding decisions were changed. And many people may not know this, but Centerville was hit as not only one of the hardest in the area, but in the state. And so we may
By
have
the
even
tax
faced
caps?
yes, may have even faced some tougher challenges than some people may even know about. So we had to look at how can we keep our students, bring more in, and you look at billboards, you look at advertising, you look at, but ultimately some of the things we may have tried has gone to more of having that information available on your website, word of mouth, some emails here and there, but it's not to the extent that it was. But I think
It's a curious dilemma, I think, that we've been placed in, because it used to be you lived in this district, you went to this school. And so while I have no problem promoting Richmond Community Schools, and I would put them up against any school in the state, it's just a curious dilemma, because there are no funds for marketing. So you have to find them another way, and yet you're put in a position where you really feel like you must market. And so you really are sort of in the place where you kind of just have to tell your story, tell it well, really concentrate on the product, and make sure that the delivery is very good. But in the meantime, really the state's put us in a situation where you don't have a choice. And so now what you'll see is Union County buses coming to Boston to pick up students. Buses in parking lots in the community that they don't, because
Sure.
you must. And so it's an interesting place to be, because people will say, why are you spending taxpayer dollars to market? Which, well, you can't really. But if you don't, in the same breath they say, well, are you afraid of a little competition?
That's,
So it's just an interesting no-win, I think, situation.
It is, and I don't like it. It tends to put schools as competitors.
No question.
And through all of that, we have to learn to play nice, with each other. And I think the demographics are of the situation, like Suzanne said, it's the state through the funding formulas have caused, I believe, a segregation between urban schools, suburban schools, and small rural schools. And all three of those have their challenges because of the demographics and the way people are moving and transferring, and where jobs are going, and where people are leaving the education process. And I know I consider Nettle Creek a small rural school corporation, and we've got challenged just to hang on to our students, and we have a bus that looks but tiger emblem on it,
Yes.
so that when it goes to different
Absolutely.
places, people see the tiger. And then billboards, and then pamphlets and things like we put out and the awards our school gets. And then we, in our vision and mission, we want to focus on certain areas because we can't be everything to everybody. So we've got to have some type of focus, an arrow that we want to go to, so we're not shotgunning different types of things. And that's caused some issues in town because other people don't want us to do this and other people want us to do this. So we're trying to focus in what we can do and do best for the students.
And on the flip side of the competition thing, there's also been opportunities we've had to work with some schools. For example, Centerville does not have FFA. There's a neighboring school that does, where we may have an AP class that they don't have. Can we work out an arrangement there to where it's a win-win situation for both school systems? So it's I don't want to give anybody the impression that we're all
Oh no.
that we're
fighting each other.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't. But it's
we
but it is
work
a
together
reality.
It's just
on
a
it.
real problem. I mean, some of the things that have been handed down by the state are sensible. For example, the money following the child, that makes sense. That makes sense to anyone with a business brain. Like, you get that. But then there's the nonsensical things that happens, which is like, yeah, be competitive, but no, you can't spend any money on marketing. And oh, by the way, we're going to throw some support for schools that will compete with all of you online. Right? So it's like it's just a very interesting place to be.
Or support for private schools or charter
Absolutely.
schools where students are leaving. And I think, and I talked about demographics in the urban schools, the large urban schools. I think that's having a great effect
Absolutely.
on them with students transferring out because they've got financial assistance now to go in what they believe to be a better school corporation. But what happens is, and you have one student start leaving, and this funding starts leaving, then you're kind of heading backwards in the resources you're able to provide. So if you're not careful or you can't stop that migration, then it kind of becomes a downward spiral. And where the school corporation is going, I think we're seeing that in some of the larger metropolitan, and some of the larger urban school corporations around the state.
Yeah, I would put Richmond schools up against any school, but a fair fight element is kind of not there. It's not really a fair fight. And so that's kind of where I sit with it. I really feel like we need to be super creative. And also, like I said, kind of like you said, get your mission, your vision in order. You know what you're doing. You know what your product is. You get the best product out there. And some people even are disturbed to call it a product. Because you're talking about kids, but in the terms of marketing, you have to talk about your product.
Right.
And
Well, I mean, we see more of the business aspect of the school than any people really, and that you have to look at it that way. I mean, it is. I mean, it's kids, it's people, but it is a business as well. You have to,
And especially now, because and like I said, I wouldn't argue with the money following the child. I really do understand that, but the issue is. When they leave, when they come in, the fact that there's a minimum amount of infrastructure that you need to do school. So you can't just say, oh, okay, well, that 10 students worth of dollars goes away, and it may be from here. They're not from one classroom. So you can't just reduce the classroom. So you still have a teacher on contract. You still have a classroom that is reasonably full. So it just proposes a lot of challenges. It's part of the puzzle, though, that makes this job, I think, so interesting. Because things come from the state. Richmond has done an exceptional job of sort of anticipating those things and making the adjustments, even when they don't make any sense. And I know these guys have too. But that's part of why it's so rewarding, because you know the end product is so important.
Suzanne brought up a good point. It is rewarding, to work this. People talk about, well, you're getting all these phone calls, you're getting all these people yelling at you about different types of things, but being able to work with other people to try to make your school corporation better is rewarding. It makes you want to learn. And sometimes we get caught up in our own little bubbles in the area that we live in. But we really have to reach out past that to other parts of the state and look at how other schools in our size or in our demographic type areas are working and the things they're doing and the networking and trying to bookmark how other schools are doing, because we can share. We can see who's doing really well and why they're doing really well, and if we can, if we have the resources to do that. So it's really important, I think, to reach out, get out of your bubble, go to the ISBA meetings,
Right.
see what other schools are doing, talk to other people. So it makes you a little bit more rounded in the education, and you can make better decisions.
It's another business type of
Yeah. Right.
practice, which is best practices. You can see what the best practices are, and you can sort of take the parts that make sense for your
We're
district.
down to our last few minutes here, but I can't let you walk out before I get each of you all to talk about what, as school board members, you see your role, or you see how your districts will handle the conversation of school safety, which I know has been an ongoing conversation. It always is, because we're talking about kids and we're talking about keeping them safe. But obviously, the dynamics of the situation have changed greatly over the last few years. State providing some money for hand wands, things of that nature. We're talking about another expensive possible item that you all will need to be finding some money for. What is the conversation with your boards right now about school safety? Increasing it, increasing resource officers, whatever the case may be.
Well, we can no longer say that it will never happen to us. You don't know. So I think minimally you have to put processes in place so that visitors and people coming into the school are funneled to where you want them to be, whether you use resource officers, where you change your entry points and that type of things. And then the state is making some funding available and grants and those types of things. And I think you need to take advantage of the things that are being granted to you as much as you possibly can. And then, then have your safety committees and have people aware and involve the community, involve the teachers, involve the staff in those types of things, so that you can make your school as safe as you practically can. We're not going to build fences around it with barbed wire and all those types of things.
Check them in, check them
Yeah.
out.
Particularly as you talked about in the communities where the school is the center of everything, or a lot of what happens in the community. How do you keep that? How do you lock that down? That's different than the way schools have been thought about for a long time. They're supposed to be open, welcoming places.
Right, there is a challenge, definitely, because I think what you'll notice in most schools that you have to be buzzed in, all those things, and then and it's taken really until now, unfortunately, when bad things happening, where people are saying, not complaining about that feeling unwelcoming, because that's that balance there. Regarding the funding for the wands from the state, though, I do want people to understand that while that's wonderful, they require people, and so the schools are really going to have to be very creative to. While that is a welcome help, it's not the total story. It's people, it's processes, it's entrances, it's watchfulness, it's see something, say something. It's all of those things put together, for sure.
Right. And then the state, of course, supplying metal detectors.
Right.
And we've already moved forward and bringing some in, but how to utilize those properly.
Right.
I mean, we're still
And
in
the
discussion.
guidelines
It's so
on those
early
are
in
sort
that.
of being said, and what I heard was, there needs to be 2 people per wand, and so now all of a sudden you have 2 people per, and so it's not as easy as handing those to schools and saying, see, we're taking care of safety.
Right. So still details
there's
to work
still
out
a
for
lot
sure,
of things to work out.
But I think we all would agree, I'm sure. I mean, safety, along with the education, safety is priority one of the students.
Yeah, there's no argument.
And how do you do something like that when you have large events also? Commencements, football games, basketball
Absolutely.
games.
I mean,
trying
there's
to
just
work that into
all of the things that must happen, practices and drills and things that must happen, and you after school. I mean, to me, that's one of the most challenging things, because that's when kids are moving in and out and after school activities. So there's just a lot to think about, but I think people being mindful and watchful, just something as easy as saying to students, if you're walking through the hallway and someone's at a door that's locked, don't let them in. Because kids are trying to be friendly. So it's just those lots of things that just educationally people need to be taught different processes, and it's okay. Don't be embarrassed to ask someone who they are and why they're here. That seems so simple, but when you're being taught to be customer friendly, to say, I'm sorry, could you stand at the camera and so that I can see your face and I know that you're supposed to be here. So
That's why I think it's important that you involve the community members in your committees, your safety committees, so that those things like all these practices, all the baseball, football, basketball games, all these games we do, that when you have to make process changes to move people through a certain point and be sure people are educated, to look for things, that if you involve the community in the more areas in your community that you can practically involved in it, I think would be hugely beneficial.
It's so interesting too, though, because that balance with you don't want to share all of your procedures because you don't want those to be public knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
And for us, we have a state police detective on our board, and because you have a city
We do.
policeman on, and that comes in
That does help a lot.
very helpful with particularly as laws change and but when questions about security, what's legal, what's not legal,
And we want everyone feeling safe. And I know that's harder and harder in the times that we're in, but that's our number one mission is on safety, is that everyone feels comfortable and safe. And then we want them also to feel welcome so that we can go about the business that we're really there to do.
Thank you all for your time. We appreciate you being here. Hopefully you've found some information that will drive you maybe toward becoming a school board member. Suzanne Derengowski with Richmond Community Schools, Gary Keesling with Nettle Creek School Corporation, Brad Lambright, Centerville Abington Schools. I appreciate you all taking some of your Thursday evening to be with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back, talk to Tom Williams with the Richmond chapter of the NAACP as we continue with In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11.
I'm Al Bledsoe.
I'm Ron Chappelle, co-host with Al here at Proudly We Serve. On our next program, we've got Ron Ross, who is the director or leader of the Whitewater Motorcycle Club. And then there's Mike Roth, who is the leader of the American Legion Bike Riders.
Watch us on WCTV Channel 20 at 8 p.m. Monday evening.
Welcome back to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Glad you're able to join us for this edition of In Focus. And we have changed out the chairs and brought in Tom Williams, who is the president of the Richmond Chapter of the NAACP. Thank you for coming out and spending some time with us.
Eric, I really appreciate you inviting myself to represent the local chapter. We're trying to get the word out that we're still alive and working hard for the residents of Richmond, Indiana. I think a lot of individuals have the perception that because of the title, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, that we just focus on the issues of those people of color. Well, if you realize what the logo for our chapter stands for, the scales of justice, we are representing all American citizens in their quest for equal rights and equal access. I get several calls a year, some of them true discrimination accounts, some where it's just a matter of communication error. But surprisingly, several people who aren't individuals of color have reached out to the NAACP. I just recently joined the ranks in the last 4 years of the disabled, and I'm in a wheelchair. But I've learned just in trying to get around Richmond, there are still accessible entryways that aren't made for wheelchair-bound individuals. So I've picked up a new cause, not only for the rights of people of color and those that felt that their justices have been tried. I'm also pushing a banner for those that are disabled and have trouble getting into some of the locations in Richmond. So you may see me rolling around town, looking at doorways, ramps onto sidewalks, which I appreciate Richmond doing their upgrade and putting the nice wheelchair ramps on their sidewalks. But getting back to the NAACP, we are currently in the throes of our membership drive and voters registration.
Okay.
So if you have not updated your membership, be it in the last year or several years, we could really use your help. We need your input, we need your confidence, and we're hoping that you reach out to us. Your
meetings are held once a month?
Once a month. Right now we're meeting the first Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. at Mount Olive Baptist Church. Okay. But we have also inquired with IU East and Ivy Tech about having meetings here to increase student population. Okay. And then we're sending out letters to the churches wanting to allow them to allow us to come in and have our meetings at their churches. We want to be open. We want to be accessible.
Now, I know that you all have had meetings during the last year where you have brought in people to your meetings that you were talking about the whole community might be interested in. Sheriff Kappa and a couple of his deputies came and spoke for well over an hour. Your meetings normally last an hour, but it went beyond. The mayor has been in, Donnie Benedict with Richmond Police Department. So you all are really trying to engage on a number of different levels. Yeah,
it's about creating positive partnerships. Some of those agencies are agencies that have had issues in dealing with race or issues centered around race. Our contention is develop positive relationships, work with them outside of the realm of dealing with an issue of race or injustice. You get to know who you need to talk to. They know who they're dealing with, and the relationship works out just marvelously. You get a chance to discuss the issues that are really at hand, and you're not guarding your cards. It's not about intimidation. It's about developing positive relationships throughout the community and hopefully growing as a community. We're investigating a project that's going to be launched here in the next few weeks. With our discussion with the fire department, it's been a while since they've actually employed someone of color. And we reached out to the fire department, sheriff's department, and the police department. And we came up with an idea, working with officials here at IU East, a project called DORI. And the acronym stands for Diversity Oriented Recruitment Initiative. And it's a template for recruitment and training and development of minority candidates for police, fire, and sheriff. It's not only a template for that aspect of employment, but when I worked at Reed Hospital, we had positions we entitled scarce skill, and one of them was nursing. We felt that if we built our own nurse, they would be more likely to stay in Richmond, work in Richmond, and progress in their careers right here in the city. We have wonderful colleges that offer training for nursing. We identified employees that weren't in that profession within our employment capabilities and offered them opportunities to become nurses. So we started building early an employer profession that we had difficulty recruiting. I don't think that's the case now as far as recruitment of nurses, but it fluctuates. So we looked at, why not, if we have an issue or concern about the diversity of our workforces, we need to start as early as 4th grade. Each one of those divisions in the city government has junior academies. If we can interest a 4th grade male, female in, say, police work, they have a police explorers program. The fire department has a junior academy, and the sheriff department has something similar. Introduce those candidates at that age, so as they progress, we track them, offer them incentives, scholarship monies, support for the fees that are associated with the academies, and by the time they graduate from high school, you've got a graduate that has background, interest, and a yearning to become a fireman, police officer, or sheriff. And I think all those directors of those divisions are interested in what we have to offer, and we are going to meet with the mayor and present the project to him on August the 30th. By the way, we've set up monthly meetings with the mayor. So if you haven't been involved with the NAACP and you have concerns in the city, we can be a conduit for those concerns to the mayor on a monthly basis.
We don't want you to get out of here without mentioning, you mentioned that you've been having conversations with IU East and Ivy Tech. Those conversations, I think, have helped re-spark the Unity Banquet, which the NAACP used to have, used it to raise money for scholarships.
Yes.
Let's get that information out there.
Okay, September the 14th at Reed Lingle Hall, beginning at 6 o'clock, we are reinstating our Unity Banquet. We have invited Dr. Charlie Nelms, who is a former IU East chancellor.
Yes.
In fact, I talked to Charlie today, and he's extremely excited about reuniting with his former co-workers and friends here in the city of Richmond. His topic is going to be building diversity through the pipeline. As I mentioned, that's one way that we can increase minority numbers, especially in areas where they are not represented well. That evening, we're also having a great dinner. We have entertainment in the likes of Elena Renee. I met Elena at an IU Black Alumni function. She's a graduate of the IU School of Music and is starting her professional career. I reached out to her because I figured I better get her now before she goes big time, and she's a little bit too expensive to get here. The other organization that's going to be presenting is the Fishermen of Historic Bethel AME Church. They're an outstanding male vocal ensemble, and they'll lift your spirits. So we're wanting everyone to come out. Tickets, there's a number that you can see at the bottom of the screen that you can reach us for tickets. And we will be launching advertisement within the week. If you have any questions, you can contact me.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the things that you mentioned, and you mentioned being in a wheelchair. You mentioned health issues. Diabetes awareness is one of those things I think that you and the NAACP may be trying to get more information out about.
Yes. I think because I'm a double amputee, people assume that, well, he's a diabetic. I actually lost my legs to a disorder I was diagnosed with in 1998 called von Hippel-Lindau syndrome, VHL for short. But you're right, Eric. There are a lot of disparities in the healthcare area, especially for people of color, Blacks, Hispanics. I see individuals that need help and may not know what to do to get it. So we're working hard with Read Health, trying to get information out and sponsoring health fairs. It's been a while since we've done one, but one of our members, and I'm name dropping, is Sharon Harlan, and she's outreach director for Read Health, and she has a program that meets monthly called
Medical Mondays?
Medical
Is that what she's
Mondays.
doing? Yes.
Beautiful organization. She brings in health care information, mentioning diabetes, high blood pressure, stress, depression. I mean, she covers the full gamut, as well as bringing in professionals who can help you navigate the healthcare insurance system. It's about getting information out there. Maybe 50 years ago, in the crux of the civil rights movement, we just didn't have access. We have better access. I wish I could say things are great, but there's room for improvement in any community, and that doesn't leave Richmond out. But I think the doors are open for communication and developing the partnerships that will lead us in a direction that builds a better Richmond. And the NAACP wants to be a part of that. There's some people that think we're our grandfathers and grandmothers' organization, but we're not. We're dealing with issues more than just race now. Social economic concerns, opiate concerns. There are a myriad of things that we need to get involved with. Our local school systems. You just had school board members on. There are issues that we need to get involved with and be present at school board meetings, council meetings.
And we're going to have you back as soon as we get through our election cycle, because there's more information I know that we definitely want to get out.
Yeah, you can tell that I'm ready to tell someone.
There you go. Thanks for getting here. We will start our In Focus candidate forums next week as we talk with candidates running for town council in Hagerstown. Thanks for watching In Focus tonight. Have a good weekend. Keep up with local government information and shows with WGTV Online. Go to WCTV.info and click on the WGTV Online button. It's a live stream and video on demand site in one. Click the play button, you'll see whatever's on the air on WGTV Channel 11, or scroll down for videos on demand. Choose whatever meeting or show you'd like to watch. It's easy to stay informed with WGTV Online, a service of Whitewater Community Television.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, Channel 11.